Hello and welcome to my podcast, Up Your Total Glow, your podcast for your body, mind and soul to support, guide and empower you to uncover a more glowing, healthier and feel-good version of you. I am super excited that you're here because if you ask me, there's nothing that looks and feels better. And I'm always excited about my episodes, but I could not be more excited about today's guest. Not only is my guest today Australian, which are always plus points for me, but we also share a very similar approach to helping others to become a healthier and happier version of themselves, because we are basing our work on science and then applying this theoretical knowledge to our own bodies first, and then translating this into practical, doable action steps that work for others too. And I have to share with you that I have actually been a fan of my guest for quite a while. So I could not have been more excited when she approached me for this interview, because my guest has the most amazing blog and Insta page, plant-based of course, called Hazel and Cacao. So yes, today I'm speaking with the amazing, absolutely brilliant Talida Voinea, and she is a certified family awareness educator with postgraduate studies in biomedical science, focusing on nutrition of course, but also on reproductive endocrinology. And yeah, I've already mentioned her amazing blog and Insta, which you have to check out. So many amazing, absolutely healthy, delicious recipes. But I am also super excited to announce that Talida's book is coming out today on the 18th of September. And her book is called Eating for Hormone Balance, a Plant-Based Guide. And I just know that this book is going to be absolutely amazing. And I can't wait to get my hands on it. In fact, I'm pretty sure I will order it right after I have recorded this. So if you want an amazing, empowering read, then this is definitely for you. And in our interview, Talida shares with us her own story. She, with hormone health and with her health in general. She also tells us what phytoestrogens do to our hormones, how they affect our hormones, and what the best fats are for our hormone health, and so much more. Honestly, this interview is absolutely amazing. It is full of wisdom, full of love, and if you want to know how to live your best life aligned with your hormones, then this episode is for you. So now, without any further ado, here she is, the amazing Talida. Hello, beautiful Talida. I am so excited that you are here today. How are you?
I'm doing really well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You look really well. You look glowing. Well, the pleasure is totally mine, because I have to confess, I've been a long time fan of yours. I love your blog. So I am so excited. And if you haven't checked out the blog Hazel and Cacao, so this is Talida's blog, and it's just beautiful, the most beautiful, delicious recipes. So everyone go and check this out right now. No, first listen to us.
Thank you.
Okay, let's jump right into it. Tell us a little bit about you. So who are you? The big question, who are you? No, what do you do? And what's your journey? So why are you so passionate about what you do right now?
Yeah, so at the moment, I'm kind of early on into the middle of a bit of a career transition. So I worked as a dental hygienist for over 10 years. And then when I had my little boy, I decided not to go back into that. I really didn't like it. And I think the reason for that is because I had had this big health trauma in my life, and that's really the only thing I wanted to sort of discover. And so yeah, now I've sort of I've started this blog because plant-based eating was a really a crucial way that I helped heal myself. And I've been doing my blog for about 4 years, if not more. I've lost track. And I became a certified fertility awareness instructor, and I also went back and did some more studies in science. So I've got some postgrad studies in biomedical science with my focus was nutrition science and reproductive endocrinology.
Amazing.
So yeah, I plan to do a lot more. I feel like I love to learn. So this is still sort of the beginning. When I have time, I plan to learn a lot more, further my studies, and yeah, just get further into this women's health sort of area.
I love it. And I feel once you really start diving into health and trying to help others, and maybe also having your own business and doing so, you will forever learn. It's just part of the deal. And I feel also everyone who does this also loves learning and developing. And I can really hear that from you as well. I
Absolutely,
didn't know this
yeah.
about your former career. That's very interesting. Yeah, I love it. So you really plan to go more into female health, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
And
that's what my health trauma was over. So then that's where my passion is. Yeah.
so can we dive a little bit into your health trauma so that
Yes.
my audience can maybe relate or understand?
Yeah. Yeah, so it started when I got married. I chose a contraception, and I chose the Implanon contraception, and I did not do well on it. And I had a lot of spotting and bleeding when I was on it, and it like completely changed my personality, and I hated the way I felt on it.
Wow.
And I kept going back to the doctor to say, you know, should we get it removed, etc. And they just said, just stick to it. Your body will adjust, and you'll eventually stop bleeding, and you'll feel back to normal. And I went back to them about 3 or 4 times, and then I just stopped. And after about 8 months of having it in there, I hadn't had enough because the bleeding hadn't stopped, and I was still feeling miserable. So I took it out, and I instantly felt better. Like I instantly, within 24 hours, felt like myself again. It was like this fog lifted, and I was back to myself. But unfortunately, my cycle didn't go back to normal. And within a couple of months, I hadn't gotten my period back, and I had started to get very, very anxious. And I'd never really experienced anxiety before. This was sort of verging on starting to get some panic attacks, and it actually got so bad that I ended up having seizures. So that's what happened. And what it was that I didn't ovulate after being on the Implanon for a full year after getting off. And because I wasn't ovulating, I wasn't producing progesterone. And we need progesterone to help us uptake the neurotransmitter GABA, which is our very calming neurotransmitter. So because I didn't have GABA, I had extreme anxiety and panic attacks, which I'd never experienced before. And if your GABA is so low if you're that deficient in GABA, it does actually lead to seizures. So I was that bad that I was getting seizures. I always say that I've never quite met someone that had an anxiety disorder quite as extreme as mine. I know they're out there, and I've had some girls reach out to me to say they had a similar experience after the Implanon that led to seizures, but it was very extreme to have anxiety that was bad enough to lead to seizures. The doctors didn't know what it was, and they put me on antidepressants to help combat the seizures. Initially, I didn't want to go on them, mostly because I didn't like the way I felt on the Implanon, and I felt like if I just take another medication, it won't let me feel like myself again. But I was desperate. I thought I was dying, so I took them, and they did help with the seizures. They did help to make them a lot fewer, few and far between, and a lot milder. But they did not take away my anxiety. I just felt quite drugged when I was on them. And I think I was only on them for about 3 months before I had to start coming down. And I ended up having a very extreme withdrawal reaction. It took me over a year to actually be able to come off the medication properly. And so then I had a very bad withdrawal. But somehow in the middle of my withdrawals, my body decided to ovulate again, just out of the blue. And once I did ovulate, I never had a seizure again. So that's what I did manage to establish regular ovulation from that point. So, but my hormones were very, very, very low. I had very low estrogen, very low progesterone. I had, severe vaginal dryness to the point of atrophy because of the low estrogen. And, I would spot for 7 to 10 days before my period would come because of the low progesterone. And that took a long time to get on top of. So even though I was finally ovulating again, my hormones were not good for years. And that's when I, decided to try diet and lifestyle to help myself, because I felt like pharmaceuticals had failed me. I was traumatized over both the antidepressants and the Implanon, and I just didn't think that was going to work for me. So, I started looking into more natural alternatives and specifically diet and lifestyle changes.
Wow. What a powerful story, to say the least. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, wow. I feel there was so much in. So for one, I think it's really, really important to bring the message out there what the contraceptive pill or implants or all these things that deal with hormones that we put into ourselves and then dysregulate our normal cycle, our normal balance of body. I feel it's still not so well known what these products really do. So more and more now, but I can only speak for myself, and obviously I'm way older, but for me, there was no question. Of course I would go on the pill, and I was on the pill for, I don't know, 15 years, and there was no question about it. I didn't even think that this could do any harm to me. And clearly I was very lucky with that. Maybe also because I've already, been through my own health trauma and went always back to diet and lifestyle. Yeah, maybe this saved me, but I hear so many horror stories now, and I feel so many people don't know about this, generally don't know. And also there needs to be more education, I feel, also from the doctors. The other thing I would like to say is, I've got a similar, or not similar, very different, but I can relate to, that drugs failed you. In my family, there runs severe arthritis. And at some point, I was on medication against arthritis because there was just so much inflammation in my body. And the same, I just felt not myself. I was just like, I was running around like, I just knew that that's not right. I was starting to get depressed, and it just wasn't me. So I can so relate to this. And I think it's so wonderful how you trusted yourself, even though the doctor kind of said, oh no, just wait. I mean, and I don't want to say something bad about doctors. They are amazing for life saving, but I feel there is still a lot they don't know when it's about prevention or about really bringing the body back into balance and health. Because what they do, I feel, is they treat the symptoms, and often this is masking then the actual imbalance. I'm sure you feel the same way, or even creating more imbalance in the body. So Absolutely. So for me, I was lucky because I had a doctor who was more open. He was like, okay, if you are feeling this way, this is not normal. We put you onto something else. And I then decided, no. I remembered, okay, what was my journey all about? No, I can do this differently, but I can so relate. And I feel so many probably can.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so let's dive more into female health and
Mhm.
especially into your book. I'm so excited, honestly. So, your book is coming out very soon. And
Mhm.
yeah, can we dive a little bit into the topics that you discuss there? So,
Mhm.
how does plant-based diet, how is that good for female health, or how does this, yeah, just tell us a little bit here.
Yeah, so I am plant-based myself. I'm almost 100% plant-based, but I did want to write this book and everything I share in a more inclusive way because in the research, plant-based diets are any diet that has 80 to 85% plants, and any diet that follows that pattern, Mediterranean, pescatarian, vegetarian, vegan, have very similar health benefits. But overall, the reason I think plant-based diets are so good for women in general is mainly because they're very anti-inflammatory, and we have quite a lot of research saying that sort of any type of plant-based diet is quite anti-inflammatory. And probably one of the biggest reasons for them being so anti-inflammatory is because they focus on a diversity of plants which have fiber, and fiber is really good for the gut. And as we know, the gut is, the seat of our immune system as well, and so it helps to really lower inflammation by improving gut health. I also think they're actually quite, I know they get a lot of, especially vegan diets, get a lot of criticism for being nutrient deficient, but they're actually very good nutritionally. And there was a study that came out that compared a range of different diets. So omnivorous diets, pescatarians, vegetarians, vegans, just all of them. And they actually found that none of our diets at the moment are adequate nutritionally. So we all have gaps in the diet. So there's not really one diet you can eat that's going to be perfect. And in fact, the more plant-based we saw the fewer nutrient deficiencies. And I think that's important because I think that's a big misconception. And that's actually probably the main reason I went plant-based many years ago, because at that time, that was the information I came across, that they're higher in nutrients. And I really needed that because I was very depleted when I was on the withdrawals. I couldn't eat. I was very nauseous for 3 years. So I was very underweight and very depleted. So that was actually the reason I chose a plant-based diet, because I felt like it would give me more nutrition. And probably another reason they're very good for women in general is we have studies showing that they help improve fertility, especially swapping out animal-based proteins for plant-based proteins can help improve fertility by up to 30%. And they're very good for women in menopause as well. They can help reduce hot flashes, and especially the diet's rich in phytoestrogens as well. Yes, that's all that's coming to my head at the moment.
Beautiful. That's plenty. And yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you. I myself almost totally plant-based as well. The only product that I will include here and there is ghee. And I feel that works for my body very well. But I also love your approach in your book that, it's really for everyone. You just share all the science, all the research that you have done, and point out, what maybe then helps you more to bring the best out in you. And yes, to me, it makes total sense. Plant-based, of course, it's full of fiber, it's full of all those amazing micronutrients, and even things that we don't totally understand yet, what their power is and how they affect our bodies. And kind of, maybe that sounds a little bit woohoo now, but I mean, we came from the earth. So to me, it all makes sense. Yeah, so absolutely beautiful. I love it. And you already started to talk a little bit about phytoestrogens. So can we dive a little bit more into this? Because I feel that there is still a lot of misunderstanding around it. So I often have clients who are completely confused when I say, or when I suggest, let's include this or that, but oh no, but this will, mess up my hormones. Isn't there this thing, phytoestrogen, and that will then do this and that? And I'm like, oh, where did you get this piece of information from? So can we clear that up? So I would love to hear your wisdom around this.
Yes. Okay, so phytoestrogens are compounds found in the fiber component of a plant that have a similar structure to estrogen, and they can very weakly bind to estrogen receptors in the body, but they're much weaker, so up to 100 to 1,000 times weaker than our own body's estrogen, or the estrogen that we eat in animal products, so dairy and meat. So that is real estrogen that is exactly the same. This is different. And I think the fear comes in because of the idea that they can bind to these receptors. But that's actually an extremely positive thing, because phytoestrogens work with your body. I call them an estrogen adaptogen, because they adapt to what your body needs. So in menopausal women that are lower in estrogen, this is why we can have phytoestrogens help increase estrogen and therefore lower hot flashes and that sort of thing. And reproductive age women that tend to be a little bit higher in estrogen, it actually helps to lower estrogen in the body and then prevents things like cyclical breast pain and heavy periods, and or at least helps in those areas. So that's the way I like to. They have a different response depending on the different target tissue. And overall, it's very positive. They know how to work with the body. And personally, I think they're probably one of the best things you could eat for hormone balance. And I actually still try to get more of them in, because they are quite powerful. Unfortunately, there is a lot of misconception. And I do want to say though that for soy in particular, there's so much amazing positive research, especially on breast cancer prevention. I think a big fear is that they can cause breast cancer, because we know that estrogen can, but actually the huge bulk of the evidence says to the contrary, that it's helpful in preventing. And also if you already have breast cancer, it helps with survival rates as well. But I will say that a lot of the research is done on Asian populations, which do tend to just naturally eat a lot more soy in their diet. And when we have soy data in the Western populations, we get varying results. And the reason for that, scientists now believe, is because of S-equol, which is the compound that is released from the gut when they break down the phytoestrogen. And it is responsible for all the positive effects. And so what they're showing is that Asian populations can produce a lot more of this S-equol and get a lot more positive effects compared to the Western population. For a while, they thought this was genetic, but now they're finding out that this is a gut microbiome problem. And because Westerners, because of the diet that we have is so not great for the gut microbiome, it's much harder to produce the S-equol. But even in Western populations, you have certain groups like the vegetarians, for example, that can produce just as much or even more S-equol than the Asians. And that, again, speaks to microbiome, because we need a wide diversity of plants to help our microbiome work properly, and have the diversity of microbes we need to actually break down the phytoestrogen so that they can do what they need to do.
Totally beautiful.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that, because without a doubt, every time I'm on my Instagram and I post something about soy or flax seeds, which are our biggest phytoestrogen sources, there will be someone on there that says, no, it really does not agree with me. And I will believe them because I don't want to discount their stories, but I'm just going to say, if it really doesn't agree with you, look at your gut. You know, is there something there?
Totally, absolutely.
Yeah.
Beautiful, very well said. I couldn't agree more. Love you, love your wisdom, love how you shared it. What I also thought really powerful, you know, again, it gives tribute to the power of plants, because it is really those plants, like you said, that can regulate, like either, you know, they try and give you more of what you need, or try and make sure you don't get too much. So I don't feel anything else can do that as well as plants.
Yes.
Not sure if I explained that very well how I meant it, but really this regulation, I think that's
Yes.
so powerful, and you explained that so beautiful. Yeah, unfortunately, of course, everybody is different, and I feel also if you already hold a lot of skepticism towards a certain way of eating or towards certain foods, and then it doesn't work for you straight away, you might feel it's proof, oh no, that's not quite right. And I think it's great to stay skeptical. That's really important, and also to really listen to your body. But I would like to say two things. Yes, if the microbiome isn't right, isn't diverse enough, if there is stuff going on, of course, it will very likely react differently until the variety, the diversity, the balance has been created. And then also the other thing is that it's really important to, I feel we are, you know, body, mind, soul. So if we already have a fixed opinion in our mind, it probably also somehow transfers to your gut, because yes, there is the gut-brain axis, and it's not so easy to separate. So yeah, totally. So stay open and still trust your gut, but also, you know, try it maybe for a little bit longer, or work with someone who really can help you to create balance first. Because also, and that's maybe another thing still, in my experience, the body might first completely rebounds and rebel against, because, you know, it's trying to heal, and when it's trying to heal, it often needs to get worse, unfortunately. That's at least my experience.
Yeah.
Okay, but I want to get more into your wisdom. So how can women then use flax seeds, for example, to help their hormones, to help rebalance, regulate their hormones again?
Yeah, so the phytoestrogens in flax seeds are actually very powerful. They're more powerful than the ones in soy, and they're particularly good for breast pain. They're actually considered first-line treatment for cyclical breast pain, but you have to eat them ground, because if you eat them whole, you can't really digest them. They'll go straight through, and you're not going to get any benefits out of them. But the problem with grinding them is that they can, because they're very high in omega-3 fats, they oxidize very quickly when exposed to oxygen. So the way I do it, and I have experimented over the years, and I found that this is the most beneficial, is I grind a big batch of flax seeds, and then I put it in a glass container and I freeze it. And the great thing about flax seeds is that you don't even need to defrost them once they're ground. You can just use them as you normally would. They just act the same way. You don't want to like buy pre-ground flaxseed from the store, because that's likely already oxidized. So once it's ground, it oxidizes within about 24 hours.
Yeah.
So that's the way I do it. And in all the research studies that I've seen, their recommended dose is 1 to 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed daily. I just put it in every single one of my breakfasts. So I'll put a tablespoon of flaxseed in all the breakfasts that I consume. A lot of other people just put it in a glass of water and drink it, or a juice or a smoothie or something like that. And yeah, that's that's about all I can think of saying. And with flaxseed, just experiment with it, but definitely ground and like either frozen or put in the fridge and not pre-ground from the store.
Yeah, great. I really love that you said that, because this is really important, and otherwise can actually do more harm than good, because of all the mold that then creates, which we can't see.
Oh, I didn't even think about the mold. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a really common issue that I see then in clients suffering from mold. Yeah, but what I love, you used to put it in the fridge. I love the idea about putting it into the freezer, because still it only keeps a certain amount of time then. And, I make little batches, put it in the fridge, but this idea is so much better. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and I was put off by the freezer for a while too, until I actually had a friend say, oh, you don't even need, because I didn't want to defrost. I didn't want to wait for defrosting, but you don't need to.
Yeah,
like
that's true.
Just use them as normal. Yeah.
And so easy to make, and really fairly inexpensive. So why wouldn't we want to try this out, And in your experience, for how long would you recommend for someone to try this out, to give this a go? How long did it take you until you felt differences?
Oh, well, my story is a little bit different
Yeah,
because it
very.
took me many, many years to get better. But I would say anything related to hormone health, you need to wait around 3 months.
Yeah.
You need to be consistent for about, hormones take around that time. And, that may have something to do with the amount of time that the egg follicles take to mature. But in general, you might see some changes earlier than that, but you probably won't see full effects until you've stuck with it for about at least 3 months. And then, but like, it's just something, like with flax seeds, and I just try to do it forever. Like, it's just part of my daily, just get used to it and do it, not as a treatment, just as a lifestyle. Yeah.
Agreed, and it feels so good. But I love I love to know for my audience, or I love for my audience to know rather, that it takes, about 3 months until they can really expect the results, or the most of the results to feel also, because this is another issue I feel with our very fast-paced world these days, that we try something out and we expect it to work, or have worked already yesterday.
Yes,
Okay, that's a little bit exaggerated, but that's our approach to health and to losing weight, to everything these days. And our bodies, they need time. They can recover. Obviously, you're a fabulous example of this. I am an example of this. Our bodies are absolutely amazing, but yeah, they do need a little bit of time. And if you think about it, 3 months, that's nothing. Okay, but let's get more into other foods that can either hurt your hormones or are really good for your hormones. Let's maybe get into those. Oh, I won't say anything. Let's talk about seed oils. So what's your take on seed oils, and what do they do for our hormones, or to our hormones rather?
Okay. So this is tricky because at the moment it is very controversial online. I think the way I break it down is we look at the types of fats. So we have 3 main types. Well, no, we've got 4 main fats. Trans fats, which are absolutely horrible, and we should not be eating them at all. They're the worst for our health. But thankfully, in places like Australia, and I'm sure many other places, they're now banned. So you're not really getting a lot of them in your foods anymore, but they definitely were a problem for quite a while. We have saturated fats, which are found mostly in our animal products, meat, dairies, and also tropical oils, like coconut oil, palm oil, that sort of thing, and cacao butter as well, which comes from chocolate. And then we have our monounsaturated fats, which are our olive oil and our avocado oil. And then we have the polyunsaturated fats, which are all our seed and vegetable oils. So the problem with seed and vegetable oils is they're not they're very highly processed, and they're not processed in a good way. So when we look at our olive oil and our avocado oil, they're cold pressed and they retain a lot of the nutrients. And you know, we know that olive oil is very beneficial for health. Seed oils are usually chemically processed. They use hexane, and then they're bleached and deodorized, and then they're often like left without any nutrition in them, so they have to add synthetic antioxidants back in. And so for me, this is not very, I don't know, I don't like the sound of that. I don't like the sound of, I would prefer if I could find a cold pressed version of a particular oil. I would much rather choose that. If we're looking at health outcomes, however, I personally, from the research that I have seen, do not believe that seed and vegetable oils are that detrimental to health, especially in comparison to saturated fats. So the bulk of the evidence does actually, we have evidence showing increase in inflammation and all these problems in animal studies. Okay, so rat studies, all of that. Yes, we have a few negative outcomes there, which I think is where the majority of the problems arise online with these oils. But animal studies don't usually translate to human studies. So if we compare the two, and we do have a fairly big bulk of human studies on a lot of vegetable oils, they're not that as detrimental to health as people believe. So they actually find that they are more anti-inflammatory in comparison to saturated fats. But having said that, can we get good quality of these oils? You can. They're a bit harder to find. And they're also quite high in omega-6. And so then therefore the balance between omega-6s and omega-3s becomes a bit of a problem, because omega-6s tend to be a little bit more pro-inflammatory if they're not balanced with enough omega-3s. I think the majority of the health concerns that come with seed and vegetable oils are mostly from our deep fried junk foods, because that's where we get a lot of it in. You know, that's a big bulk of seed and vegetable oils. It's going to really up your omega-6s. And it's like, that's the worst quality oil you can have. And it's deep fried over and over and over again, like sometimes for 2 weeks before they even change the oil, which then really increases oxidation and leads to inflammation. So that's the problem. Like, that's the problem. It's in our junk foods, in our deep fried junk foods. If you were going to use a little bit at home here and there, it's unlikely it would create as much of a health issue as, you know, deep fried junk foods.
Yeah, agree with that as well. But I also feel that it's also a matter of knowing how to use it then, because obviously you know so much. So then if you were to purchase a really good cold pressed seed oil, you would probably not deep fry it, and you know that then, okay, these are also more volatile, and it's important to use them in a certain way. So I feel this is yet another issue. But I love how you explain it. And also, again, this is what I love about your book and about your work in general, that you have a look at all the science, at all the research, then you try things out on yourself, or unfortunately had to try things out. So you have your own experience. Obviously, you also study always more and more, and then put this into practice. And this is very much what I feel I do as well, and what I think where we get the most value out. So thank you very much for sharing. And what's your take on protein? So is there a certain kind of protein that's maybe better for our hormones, or is all type of protein the same for our hormones? So again, I would love to hear your take on that, or your experience rather, your wisdom.
So I again, another controversial topic.
Very controversial. I think
based on the evidence, we basically have plant-based proteins and we have animal-based proteins. And what we know is, without a shadow of a doubt, that plant-based proteins tend to be more anti-inflammatory. So protein sources from legumes, and nuts and seeds and that sort of thing, they have quite an anti-inflammatory effect, which is quite important for women. And then animal protein sources do have more of an inflammatory effect. Now, and that is standalone protein. Even when you take out the saturated fat, even when you take out all of that, they still have a more pro-inflammatory effect when compared to plant-based proteins. But the problem arises then is that if we're going to focus most of our protein source on plants have a lot less protein. And it's true that we don't need that much to, really hit our goal. Like, I could have 4 pieces of wholemeal toast and hit my protein goals for the day, but that doesn't mean that's optimal. That's the amount that I need to avoid deficiency. So when we're looking at optimal levels, particularly for women's hormones, and what we're looking at for women's hormones is blood sugar balance, because we need, like, our blood sugar is such a root cause problem for our reproductive hormones. So if we don't get blood sugar right, the rest, our estrogen and progesterone will be off. So when we're looking at optimal protein intake for blood sugar in particular, we're looking at 20 to 30 grams per meal 3 times a day. So that's, 60 to 90 grams of protein per day. And that can go higher depending on your needs. So if you're a very athletic person, if you exercise a lot, if you are under periods of stress or illness, then protein needs go even higher. So I think it's very important for plant-based women in general to not fall for that. It's so easy to get your protein, I don't need to worry about it. I think we do need to be quite mindful of it. With a little planning, yes, you can definitely, I hit 20 plus grams of protein in pretty much all of my meals without even thinking about it now, but it did take a bit of education to get to that point. And it took me a while to build up to even being able to tolerate that amount of plant protein, because a lot of it comes from beans and legumes, and I had a very bad gut and a very hard time digesting them. So it's sometimes better to transition into a plant-based diet more slowly to give your gut the time it needs. And I did that too. Like my particular problem was beans, which is a problem if you want to be plant-based, because they're such a good protein source. And I had to start on literally about a tablespoon a week because I was just in agony in my gut when I tried to eat them. But over time you can build up to that and get to that state. Probably the other thing we could talk about with protein is about the incomplete sort of protein in plant-based. Now, it's plant-based foods are not actually incomplete, and what I'm talking about is there's 20 essential amino acids which build up our protein, and I think 8 or 9 of them are essential, which means we need to eat them. Our body can't make them, our body can make the rest. And so the theory is that plant-based meat and animal foods are complete proteins and plant-based foods are not. That's actually not true. Plant-based foods are complete, but they are lower in some amino acids compared to others. And so if you were only going to stick with legumes, for example, as your protein source, and you didn't add whole grains and you didn't add nuts and seeds, then you may run into problems because you may not be getting all of the amino acids you need. So it's not something to stress about, but it is something to be mindful of, that if you're going to go plant-based, you need that variety. And if your gut cannot handle the variety, then move into it slowly and work on your gut health so that you can get that diverse protein sort of range.
Powerful tips here again. I love it. And I feel actually in general, it's always important if you are trying to eat healthy, to eat a wide variety of foods. And this is another thing I feel that most people, most of us do fall short. And, you know, I'm not excluding myself. I also have to again and again try out new things and not get too much into my rut. I know these foods work well, my children will eat them, my husband will eat it, you know, I know how quickly it's to make. But yeah, I think this is really important because our bodies, not only in terms of the protein, yes, totally, and this is the topic right now, but in general, you know, our bodies need so many different micronutrients, and if we just eat always of one type or of a few types, our bodies can't get enough, and there will be an imbalance and there will be deficiency created, especially because also the soil is not quite what it used to be. So there's so much more pollution and not enough nutrients anymore in the soil compared to what it used to be. So I think all of these things need to be taken into account. I love that you pointed out, take it slowly if your gut is not used to it. And even if your gut also might have issues, then even more, you know, this is really important. I love that you shared your experience here. What I would like to know, and I know we have to hurry up, we are running a little bit late, but so what's your take on eating too much animal protein? Because this is something I run into a lot as well, that women, you know, are going keto, or they think they are going keto, or it's more of an Atkins based diet, because it's so popular now, and they actually run into a lot of issues here. So can you just quickly, if that's at all possible, just say something about this?
Yeah, so we know that too much animal protein has very pro-inflammatory effects. So that's going to contribute to heavy, painful periods. It will contribute to all of our inflammatory hormonal conditions. It's also not good for fertility. So we know that the higher the animal protein, the lower our rates of fertility for women in particular. But I think women with the diet stuff that go keto or Atkins or whatever, and their carbohydrates become too low, what we actually can see is that over a period of time, if they're very strict, they can actually cease to ovulate and lose their period, or at the very least start getting irregular cycles. And that is because we need carbohydrates. The ovaries have a very high concentration of mitochondria compared to other organs in our body, which that means that they need energy, and we get that from carbohydrates, we get that from glucose. So if we don't have enough energy within our system to sustain fertility, it won't. It will shut it down. So
of course, our bodies are very smart. You know, if there's not enough energy to reproduce, we won't.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
And, you know, we first, of course, save our brain, which also runs on carbohydrates, on energy. Because then it's not so important to get babies right now. It's really important that our brain still functions so we can run away, you know, from wild animals and so on. All those wild animals around these days. Okay, thank you so much. This has been so amazing. Again, I can't wait to read your to get your book and to read it then, of course, as well. Almost. So what's the title of your book? And then could you quickly share maybe 3 gold nuggets with my audience, just things that you found helpful, that they might find helpful in general? It doesn't have to be totally related to your book or to those female hormones, just, you know, wisdom that is close to your heart.
What am I doing first? Talking about the book?
Yes, please.
Okay, yes, that was the question. It's called Eating for Hormone Balance, a plant-based guide. And it goes into a lot of the topics we've spoken about today. I wanted to cover all of the topics I could think of that pertains to eating for hormones. So I don't go into much else. There is a lot more that we can talk about for hormones, but So yeah, it goes into a lot of these topics, and it also has over 60 recipes, and they're all cycle specific. So I've got recipes for all the phases of the menstrual cycle, just
Amazing.
to ensure you're getting the right nutrients for each phase. And it will be out very soon. It will be out on the 18th of September.
Yoo-hoo!
Yeah. It'll be out on Amazon just for the beginning. Hopefully after that I can extend it to other places. And yeah, if you follow me on Instagram, I will constantly be talking about it. So,
and please do follow her on Instagram, because her account is amazing. I'm such a huge fan. Yeah. So now our quick 3 wisdoms, please, from you.
Okay. These questions always put me on the spot. I think one is magnesium. I think for women in particular, like, magnesium can be such a life changer for your hormones and mental health. It tends to be one of those things that most women will benefit from, and it really did a lot for me.
Same.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing I would say is it's not all about diet, and I think a bigger contributor to hormone health is our mental health.
Totally.
And yeah, I think for me, like, you will not have good hormones if you're anxious all the time, and which was my case for a long time. So you'll struggle with fertility if you have mental health disorders. So I do want women to know that, because our endocrine system is an extension of our nervous system, so the two are linked. Third piece of advice, I don't know.
I know one that you've already said. I'm going to just suggest it, and if it doesn't feel right for you, you say something else. But you said that pretty much in the start of our interview, you know, like, you just knew that your body wasn't right, that it didn't feel right, and the doctor told you something else. So maybe keep trusting to your true intuition, to that feeling that if there's something isn't right, don't let yourself be talked out of it, because you know best. I feel this is like what your whole journey is about. Would that sort of resonate with you?
Yeah, so listening to your body and trusting yourself. But I feel like, unfortunately for me, the trauma of what I went through, because what happened was I was telling them, this is from the implant. I know it is. My cycle was different, and they didn't believe me, and they kept saying, with the antidepressants as well, like, no, this doesn't create these issues, it must be a problem with you. So that actually made me not trust my body for a very long time, and that was probably the basis of my anxiety disorder, because I felt like my body had failed me, and the medical professionals sort of made me believe that as well. You know, it can't be the medication, it has to be you. And it's taken me quite a while to learn to trust my body again. But I do feel like I'm finally almost there. And it is amazing when you do tune into your body, how much wisdom it has, you know, and it's had it all along. It's just that I didn't trust it for a long time. I obviously did at the beginning, and then I stopped. But yeah. So yeah, I know a lot of women would have a similar experience. Like, it's not us, it's you. Yeah. So don't do what I did. Go and trust your body. It knows what it's doing. Yeah.
Beautiful message. And I feel, like you said, that's a general problem with our world, how it is today, that we have really stopped listening to hearing our bodies, you know, understanding the wisdom, hearing the signals our bodies give us. We rather learn to shut it down, you know, not feel hungry, not feel pain, not feel anxious, all these things, when our bodies are really trying to tell us, oh, there's something not going right. But I feel we have to have another interview. Please, please, please. There are so many more topics I want to dive with you into, and also about your book. So I am so grateful for your time today. Thank you so much, Talida, for everything that you bring to the world. You're definitely making our world a healthier, happier, more balanced place. And yes, I am so grateful. I'm a huge fan. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. That was fun.
Pleasure. Take care, beautiful. I have no doubt that you totally loved and enjoyed this episode. So if you did, please help me on my mission to make our world a healthier, happier, better place by sharing, reviewing, and liking my podcast. I know that you were born to live your best life and to feel absolutely amazing in your beautiful body, in your brilliant mind, and in your boundless soul. So what are you still waiting for? Please make sure you do. I'm your biggest cheerleader. Keep glowing. Much love.